room for the guests whose birthday it is and whose yahrzeit it is. And the best way to make room for the Baal Shem Tov, for Shneur Zalman, and for the Maharal, the great Rabbi of Prague, would be just to be a little quiet and invite them. Let come, be welcome. Rabbi Yehudis, what was the reason why you called us together for this occasion? Please take the mic.
Thank you. I just actually, as I saw Tirza and David come in, I remembered the first time I opened my mouth in Boulder was Chai Elul when Erwin Kruger was here that year, and I said that I'm not so fussy about the religious affiliation of the person I marry, but one thing the person has to know that since the Baal Shem Tov came into the world is very different. And anybody who doesn't believe that, I'm not interested.
That's good criteria.
So we're taught that the Baal Shem Tov came into the world to bring about three loves: love of God, love of Israel, and love of each other. And I always felt a very personal connection with the Baal Shem Tov and with the Alter Rebbe. I'm teaching 3 different Tanya groups and classes. But this year also is very special. It's the 400th yahrzeit, 400th anniversary, the yahrzeit of the Maharal Prague. And if you were in Prague right now, I'm sure vendors would be coming over to you to buy little tchotchkes commemorating the Maharal, whose one of his claims to fame is that there's a big statue of him in Town Square that I don't think there's any other rabbi in the world that has that kind of thing to fame. So I figured that the confluence of these three events on this special night, especially on a Sunday night, it just was such a wonderful opportunity to bring people together. And I called it the Gathering of Miracles because I'd been watching some videos, not from a Jewish source, but of people having personal experiences of miracles that really transformed their life. And a lot of them were connected with prayer, and I thought to myself, it's not that so much that prayer brings about a miracle, but I think that prayer opens you up to see all the miracles in our life at every moment. So hopefully this night will facilitate that.
Amen.
Amazing. One of the ways to wake up to the miraculous order of things is blowing the shofar. Yes, sir.
That was a sweet one.
So the Maharal. There are many stories that are told about him. Someone wants to go in that door. We'll open that, that would be nice. The way I have it, and I hope it is right, is that when the Gershon Kitteler, who was a Baal Shem Tov's brother-in-law, was unhappy about the marriage of his sister to the Baal Shem Tov because he felt that he was not a miyuches, that he didn't come from a special family. So then he told him, don't worry, I may look like somebody who isn't really special, but I too have yichus because I come from the Maharal. So you have a sense now of their connection. The Maharal was a very wonderful person, and there was an emperor by the name of Rudolf. Now in Prague, usually the emperors they were in Vienna, the Habsburgs, they were not in Prague. But for a period of time, around the time of the Maharal, Prague, which had a university and was a cosmopolitan city in those days, at least as you can understand. And so he would always like to tease the Maharal, the Emperor Rudolf, play chess with him and do all kinds of things. One day, he comes back from a night of carousing, and in the carriage, and the Maharal is walking to shul. So he stops the Maharal, he says, Herr Rabbiner, wohin gehen Sie? Where are you off to? He says, Ich weiß nicht. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? So he tells to one of his soldiers, take the guy and put him in the Huskar. He comes back and goes to sleep, and he wakes up and they tell him, Your Majesty, do you know that you took your friend and had him put into jail? Oi, he got up, he went to jail and bailed him out. But he said, what happened? What did you tell me such a stupid thing for that you didn't know? He said, I was on my way to shul, but once I saw you, I didn't know anymore. That's how he was. There were people like the astronomer, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name now.
Tycho
The Mirandola, I think it was another one.
Tycho
Tycho Brahe, thank you. Thank you. Who was there at that time. And the Maharal was interested in so many things having to do with science. But let me read you something here of what he wrote, because it's a good introduction to wanting to have the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe here. In the last paragraph of the Talmudic tractate Ta'anit, the following statement is made in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Time will come when God will arrange a dance for the righteous in paradise. He will sit in their midst, and everyone will point the finger at him as it is written, Lo, this is our God, we have waited for him. He will save us, this is our Lord, we have waited for him. We will be glad and rejoice in his salvation. Hine Elokeinu Zeh, Kivinu Lo V'Yoshienu is one of those that we sing at the time of Simchas Torah in the Atahareta. People point to the statement and say it's against all reason to propose that there could be young maidens and men dancing in the holy place in the world to come, detached from everything that is material. Shame. Okay. However, understand that those words are meant to reveal a great blessing reserved for the righteous and a deep wisdom as contained in the same. The dance is especially suitable for young maidens, as it is written. Then shall the virgin rejoice in her dance, both young men and old together. The dance is joy expressed through action, not joy remaining in the heart. Women, especially young maidens, are less thoughtful than men, and God keeps back the full expression of joy. So don't be so thoughtful. Since one day joy will find pure expression in paradise, joy itself is called the dance of the righteous. This will be the joy of God, as it is written, rejoice in the Lord your righteous. Therefore it is said that God will sit in their midst, and everyone will point their finger at him. This means that the righteous have no other joy except in God. That is the perfection of themselves. So far, there is a simple explanation to the word of the sages. What? One must understand also what is really meant by dance. Joy is something psychical. It is the expression of perfection in man, which belongs only to the soul and not only to the material body. The body has only potential power, but no independence. Without this, there is no perfection. The body is kept down by the weight of nature. It is oppressed. When therefore a man dances, he expresses a greater joy because he feels the perfection of the soul as power. Therefore it is said that God arranges the dance of the righteous in paradise, because all that is depressing and material will be taken from them, and only the soul has power. When it is said that God is in their midst, it means that they are freed from the material which formed a barrier between them and God. The dance spoken of is not of any kind, but a round dance, a circle. Every circle has a center, equidistant from any point of the circumference. Therefore it says that God sits in the center of the righteous, as all points of the circumference are joined in the center by the radii turned towards it and attracted by it. And just as the center is apart from the circumference, so is he, the Holy One, apart, although he is in their midst. The dance has to be a round one, just a few more lines. That no one can say that every righteous person adheres to God in his own manner. As the dance proceeds round and round, every righteous one is joined to God, not from one place only, but from all places. I like that one. You know, there are so many people who, when they say, where are you, what's your point of view, they have only one point of view in the circle. But kulam Eloha Selicho Selanu Mechalanu Kabelanu. If I want to be fancy with the translation, I would say, excuse us, God, dance with us, God, Mechal Lanu, because Machol means a dance. And I think that's a thing that has to happen. In forgiveness, we have to take the part of the other. And I want to tell you something. Rosh Hashanah is coming, Yom Kippur is coming. We have still 12 days to do extra tshuva for every month of the year as it comes along. If you can imagine, most of the time we think of, oh, God is looking at me, I will have such a, so that He will judge me to hell, to this, to that. But if you can imagine the dance, and you look at it from God's point of view, and about this poor child, you know, I have to change the diapers of his mind. I have to clean him up a little bit. Pointing a finger at God means that one points out something that is separate from the rest. The righteous learn to know wherein lies God's oneness, and it's different from all else that is. The pointing with the finger is a recognition of the truth. I like that. But some people mistake the finger for what they're pointing at. Watch out. Watch out. One can only write a little about such mighty matters. The wise one will add to it out of his own wisdom and knowledge. And then he says, I talk too much. May God forgive us and make us at last the participants in this holy dance. Say amen. Amen. Okay. Well, there's a particular story which I like. It's not about the Baal Shem, it's not about the Shneur Zalman, it's about the Lubliner Rebbe. And one Chassid made his way to come, and you told the story. You told the story. and one Chassid made his way to the Rebbe, and as the Rebbe was sitting at the door greeting the Hasidim, shaking their hand, but he didn't even look at them, just took Shalom Aleichem, Shalom, continued to study. This guy comes, and they say that he had big eyebrows. So he lifted up his eyebrow and looked at him and says, go back. I don't want you to be here for Shabbos. Why? I came from so far. Because you're going to die this Shabbos, and I'm going to be standing at my table, and you're going to make everybody feel bad, and you'll verstehen them Shabbos. So go die someplace else. I'll make you get a good incarnation. I'll help you out in the court on high. But go, I don't want you here. No, you can imagine how this person felt. He makes his way with the next coach that's going back in the direction of where he came from. And the Hasidim who are coming now down say, hey, where are you going? You should be going that way. And he said, oy vey. He starts to tell him what the Rebbe said. What kind of money have you got with you? He says, 20 rubles. Well, they say about 10 rubles will take to ship your carcass back home. For 10 rubles, let's go and buy a keg of schnapps. And you come with us, and you'll be with us, and between the two of us, and we'll hold you up. And if you die in the middle, you'll die in the middle. We'll walk you out of there. Nobody will know any better. And who wants to die in some crazy inn if you can die at the Rebbe's stable? So he goes back into the wagon, and the wagon travels back to Lublin. What, Boulder? No? What's the sign? I'm getting there. It's
a long trip.
And on the way, they open up the keg of schnapps, and everybody takes it, and they say l'chaim to him, l'chaim, l'chaim. By the time they come to Lublin, the little keg was empty, and they were a good house, and they said l'chaim, and everybody was gleeful, and he decides he's going in the line to the Rebbe, and everybody, Shalom. What are you doing here? Boy, he says, what Chassidim can do with a l'chaim, even a Rebbe can't do.
Amen.
Now upset the whole business and come here and help yourself and say l'chaim. And I'm going to say l'chaim to you for a starter, that this year, when they're writing up in the book of life, what you're going to get, as we say, is l'chaim l'chaim. because may you all be inscribed in the book of life for health, for knowledge from children, for good income, for not having to worry about the news that says this or that. L'chaim, l'chaim. The Senate should pass the bill with public option. Say amen.
Amen.
I'm get you l'chaim.
There's also a teaching that in the word l'chaim, you have two words, and one word is lechem, which is bread, and the other two letters are God's name. So when you bring God's name into bread, you're also bringing an offering. And it's not just ordinary bread, it's godly bread.
Very nice.
So who will start coming up and get your, come and get it, bing, 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 bing.
So as we were talking about, tonight is both the birthday of Baal Shem Tov, Elul, Elul, the life of Elul, and also the birthday of the Baal HaTanya, Rabbi Zalman. So there's an interesting story about how the two connect. One time, the Baal Shem Tov was going to the mikveh on a cold winter night, and he had to dig a hole in the ice in order to be able to dip. But instead of just a few dips, it was a very dark night. He had his attendant with him, a shamish with him, who had a big candle. But by the time the Baal Shem Tov finished dipping, the candle was going out and out and out, and he still was bobbing up and down. So the shamish, his attendant, says, Rebbe, the candle is going out. What should I do? It's pitch black. Must have been the beginning of the month, rather than the middle. So the Baal Shem Tov said, look all around you. Look at all the candles hanging, the icicle candles that are hanging. Why don't you just take an icicle and light it? And as it says in the Talmud, the same God that says vinegar will burn can also, oil will burn, can also say that vinegar will burn. So sure enough, the shamish took an icicle, and again, the same God who declares candles will burn, made the icicle burn. And finally, the Baal Shem Tov came out of dipping, and he said, the reason I was in the mikveh so many times tonight is because tonight a very, very holy soul was conceived. And that soul, his name is going to be Shneur, which means two lights. And he's going to bring two lights into the world, the light of the revealed Torah and the light of the hidden Torah. And his greatest power is going to be that he's going to be able to light up souls that are as cold as an icicle and turn them into burning flames of connection to God. So may all our souls and the souls of everyone we know be warmed up from this night and bring life to the next 12 days of the year, and make this coming year the most bright and miraculous year.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. You hear that there are two kinds of Torah. There's the manifest Torah, and there's the hidden Torah. Now, most of the people, when they hear the word Torah, think of the manifest Torah, the Torah that has been given to them and has come down from Sinai, from generation to generation, has been expounded and explained and commented on and enlarged and given us as action directives. This is how you have to act. That basically is what you would call the revealed Torah. That's where we would study Mishnah, Talmud, the codes, and so forth. We would go to the place until we come to the last codifier who speaks to us today. And if you were to ask a yeshiva about whom do you mean, he would say the Chofetz Chaim, and in his book, No,
Mishnah
Mishnah
Berurah.
Mishnah Berurah. Okay. So that would be everything manifest there. In Warsaw, between the two world wars, there lived a very great Rebbe, not well known. His name was Piaseczner. Reb Kalonim was Talmish of Piaseczner. And he wrote a book, Derech HaMelech. Derech HaMelech means it's the straight, it's the king's highway. And he wanted to make sure that his Hasidim would learn the deep things. And he asked the question, what is the oral Torah and what is the written Torah? And he says the usual way in which you would say the written Torah is what's in the Chomishim, in the Sefer Torah, and the oral Torah is what's in the Talmud. And he said, that's already written Torah again. What's the oral Torah? The oral Torah is what hasn't been written yet. It's what we do when we interact with the Torah in the here and now. And when we become recipients of Torah min hashamayim, the Torah comes down to us from heaven today, that is the hidden Torah. And he said, because the same thing is when people say, what's nigla and what's nister? What is the manifest part of Torah and what's the hidden part of Torah? So he used to say Kabbalah is the hidden part of the Torah. He said, what do you mean hidden part of the Torah? You go into any bookstore, you go buy volumes and volumes. I want to tell you something. Right now, there's more stuff on the Kabbalah in bookstores, and you'll find a book, How to Make Kosher Meat, you know. When you get it from the butcher, what you have to do with salting and soaking and so on, you have a hard time to find such a book. But the Kabbalah of this and the Kabbalah of that, you'll find lots of books about that. So he says that's not hidden. So what's the hidden? The hidden is what happens between the soul of a person and God. We make hidden Kabbalah by receiving, making ourselves a receiver, a container to receive what's coming down for us. Stories, always wonderful. Stories are great. A man comes to the Baal Shem Tov and he says to him, the Baal Shem says to him, what is it that you bring? What question do you bring? And he said, Rebbe, I don't need anything. I don't need blessings for this or for that. Thank God, I'm quite rich. I have good children. I have good health. My wife, thank God, is good, and my children are studying Torah, and I have sons-in-law who study Torah. I'm pretty good. I don't have any particular needs. Oh, says the Baal Shem. Well, how about, would you like to hear a story at least while you're here? So he says, yes, I'll tell you a story. Once in a town there were two milk brothers. We don't have milk brothers today anymore. But that used to be a very special thing, to be a little baby and to be nursed by the same nurse. And that's how you were milk brothers. There was a famous milk brother, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and Antoninus Caesar, where he was the emperor of Rome and here was the leader of Jewry under whose aegis the Mishnah was written. And they were milk brothers and they would exchange things. Sometimes if you read the writings of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus and you just snip off and it won't be known who was the author, and you mix it up with the stuff from Pirkei Avot, you wouldn't know who said what, because the meditations of Marcus Aurelius are very wonderful. That's what a side trip that comes from the historian. But in this case, they were milk brothers, and I'll call one of them Reuven, the other one I'll call Shimon. And so it happened that they grew up, they studied together, they were inseparable. And the time came that every day when they were studying, they would argue with each other. Each one would come up with an argument, the other one would try and break it down. And that's how they became really good scholars. And it happened that when people are good scholars, rich people come and ask the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the school, I would like to have a son-in-law, give me the best one you got. That's how it happened in those days. In a few generations, you can understand how it became Torah Gedula the Mokim Echad, that the rich people and the Torah people created an elite that way, because in every generation there were more Torah great who were invited to become sons-in-law, and they would get what's called kes, which means scholarships, as it were, that while they were married, they could sit and study Torah some more. No, but what happened? One had a father-in-law in this town, and the other one had a father-in-law in that town, so they had to leave each other, and it took a while. Yet every day when they were sitting and studying Torah, they sent each other letters back. This is what I studied today, this is the question came up, and this is what I tried to answer. And so they had a correspondence. After a while, they didn't have so much time to do that, and once a week they exchanged letters. And after a while, they didn't have time to do it once a month, they exchanged letters. Finally, it was only for Rosh Hashanah that they exchanged letters, because their fathers-in-law had died, and they had become the business people who had to take care of business. Bum, bum, bum. Shimon finds himself in trouble. He is in a situation where he doesn't have any free cash. If he doesn't pay up some IOUs quickly, he's going to be lost. He doesn't know what he's going to do, and so he says, listen, the best thing I can do is to go to my friend Reuven, and he gets his horse and buggy and goes to Reuven, and arrives in the evening, and Reuven welcomes, I'm so glad to see you, my dear friend, bless you, come, come, come. The Baal Shem is telling that story to the man. Don't forget that in between. So he welcomes him, and he says, I see that you are concerned, you have some worries. What's going on? You have a concern is in your heart, is biting as it were in your heart, and you should tell it to to a friend. So he tells him, and he says, don't worry, have a good dinner, have a good rest, tomorrow morning I'll have you all fixed up. He calls his bookkeeper, and he says to his bookkeeper, please check out what we have in liquid assets at this point. And then I want you to divide it in two and bring me all the cash in a bag, which he did yet that night. And in the morning, Shimon gets up, and they daven together, they study a little together, and then he takes the bag with the money, he gives it to Shimon and wishes him well, and Shimon is very grateful, and he starts on the road on his way home, and the wheel is turning, and just as he is making his way back to his house, then Reuven is the one who's losing money and is in the same position a half a year later. So what should he do? He said, I'll go to my friend. And he arrives at his friend's house, who greets him, but not as though enthusiastic. And he said, I'll have you all fixed up in the morning. And that night, he tells his driver to get the carriage ready, and he leaves.
Oh, bad.
That's right. That's exactly what he said. Because Reuven gets up in the morning and asks, where is Shimon? And Shimon isn't here, and he sees it's going to be trouble. So what could Reuven do? He didn't even have car fare, to get back. So he goes and begins to beg, and on his way he gets a little bit better, makes a shtickle deal. By the time he comes home, he is already on the way up, and as he is on the way up, Shimon is on the way down. And now Shimon is in the same predicament, and he doesn't know what to do. He goes to Reuven, and comes like with a dog with a tail between his legs. He doesn't know what to say. I'm ashamed, I don't know what happened, da 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 da. I need your help again. He says to him, really, tell me what happened. He says, I don't know. Such a freezing fear came over me when I saw that I had to part with the money at this time. And I just couldn't help it, I had to run away. So Reuben says, I tell you what, I'll do the same I did for you last time. But this time you write me an IOU. Okay? He writes him his IOU. He goes back with the money, and he goes up, and Reuben goes down, and Reuben now has an IOU that he wants to collect, and he goes to his friend to collect, and again the friend is not willing to part with a penny. It is so bad that he goes to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, you don't know this person. He is like granite. I can't budge him at all. So now the IOU doesn't help him, and he makes his way out, catches pneumonia, dies on the road, comes up to heaven, and there they see this wonderful tzaddik, Reuben, what he has done for his friend, and they snuff out Shimon, and now the two of them are standing before the court. And it's very clear, it's an open and shut case. Reuben goes to Gan Eden, and Shimon goes to Gehenna. So Reuben says, sorry. Great holy tzaddikim who sit on the court, I can't accept that judgment. My friend, the one whom I love, I'm so close to him. Do you think I would be able to enjoy Gan Eden if I come to Gan Eden and I know that he is suffering in Gehenna? Impossible. So what do you suggest? So Reuben said like this, let him be born this time around without having to have any concerns for money. Let him feel really happy with what he has, how he's blessed in his life. And I'll be born like a beggar. And if I come to his house and he gives me a donation, a gift, with his full heart, then we'll be even. So it happened, they both of them were reincarnated, and now there is this man who, Baruch Hashem, he has a good house, good health, his wife and children are fine, they're studying Torah, he doesn't need anything, he doesn't need a prophet. So there comes this beggar to his house, and it's a cold, icy day, and he begs to help, and he says, it's important, you must help me, you must help me. And this man couldn't stand it, and he pushes him away, he falls on the ice and dies. And now they're about to snuff out the other guy and really send him where he belongs. At this time, the face of that man had turned white. He realizes that he was the person who had just taken the poor man and pushed him, and that he died from the fall. So he begs the Baal Shem, what can I do? Please tell me what I must do. And the Baal Shem Tov says to him, divide everything that you have, find the widow of the man, and maybe this will help in your life. You get a sense here of what tzedakah is about. And we have a little box, and we want to collect some tzedakah. What would you tell us about tzedakah? This is tzedakah.
Well, one thing about miracles is it doesn't necessarily have to be something that breaks the laws of nature as we understand it. Miracles can be acts of hashgacha pratit, which means specific divine providence. So I'm sure some of you heard that a few weeks ago, a very valuable member of the Jewish community, David Greenberg, was hit by a car. And thank God now he's in a recuperation center, but it's going to be a very long haul. And even before that, he was struggling a lot. And he taught a lot of children and adults in the community, and hopefully will teach them for a long time more. But it just so happens, talking about hashgacha, I was telling him about this event when I went to visit him in the hospital, and I said, David, you must be excited because you were struggling so much until now, and now this comes and literally knocks you off your feet. So he says, Yehudis, of course I am. My birthday is on Chai Elul. So besides the Baal Shem Tov and Alter Rebbe, we have David Greenberg, who, interesting, his name is David Ben Yehudis, and my name is Yehudis, and my father's name was David. So I really feel a special connection with him, and it's auspicious any time of the year, but especially during this month of Elul. You know that Hashem looks at us on Rosh Hashanah not just in our own personal life, but how we relate to other people. And even if, God forbid, a negative judgment should be deserved for a certain person, but if other people around that person is going to feel bad and upset and lost, God takes that into consideration and brings Rahmanas, brings the 13 attributes of mercy on that person, also because of other people who are there caring about and supporting that person. So we have a box in toward the door. You don't have to put it now, but if you want to before you leave, it would be really big.
Why don't we pass it around now?
Pass it around.
Well, thank you, Yesod. First of all, Mishtabon Hamzin Amamis Miyang B'Turi Yehoah has the David and Ruth.
זאב דוד בן יהודיס. זאב דוד בן יהודיס.
זאב דוד בן יהודיס. בעבור שאנחנו מברכים אותו, ובעבור שאנחנו תומכים לו. בזכר זה הקדוש ברוך הוא, ישמריה ויעשה ותורסו וסולטני גמחתו. וישלחו רפואה שלמים לשמיים לחולה ולרמחי ולפסגי לו. רפואה הנפש ורפואה הגוף. ויכתבהו ויחסמהו לחיים טוב לשון הרעות. עם כל ישראל ונאמר
אמן.
So we want to spend the rest of the time talking about miracles, and I put out that people have individual personal miracles to share, both of the miraculous kind, supernatural kind, or even hashgacha pratis. Just coincidence is what the world calls. I call it coincidences with a capital G. So please spend a minute thinking about it, and I want to kind of start off by telling you a couple of stories that happened to me. One, just the hashgacha version, the hashgacha aspect. One time when I was in Santa Fe, Rabbi Hill Goldberg from Denver was making a surprise visit for Shabbos, and he wanted to have a third meal. We had a very kind of small congregation, and it was last minute, so I was kind of elected to buy some food for the third meal. It was Friday afternoon, just a couple of hours before Shabbos, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't have any cash around, so I scrounged around the house, and I managed to come up with $12.90. And on the way out, I saw a penny right in front of the door, and I had a split second, should I pick it up or not? Hashem puts it there, maybe it's meant to be, so I pick up that one penny. I go shopping, and I'm ready to check out, and I remember we need some ice, because it was in the middle of the summer, so I go back and get ice, all in trepidation I wouldn't have enough money, and the cash register rings out $12.91.
Oh,
So and that's what I say about prayer. If you're not open to that kind of thing, you just kind of chalk it up to coincidence. But if you feel that little whisper, that little wink from Hashem, that really is a very powerful experience. And the other is, I would also call hashgacha, but to me it was a very, very, probably one of the deepest experiences in my life. I wrote about an article that I just published in England, but what happened was, when I was in my early 20s, I would have really serious depression. And I was really seriously contemplating not wanting to be alive anymore. And one day I had a whole bunch of books that I didn't finish reading, but they were overdue, and I'm driving to return them to the library, and there's this tremendous traffic jam. And I'm just kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere in the street, nowhere to move. But I remember I have some books in the back seat that I haven't read yet. And I'm still in this state of depression, wondering what's going to happen with the rest of my life. So I stick my hand in the back, and just at random, I pull out one of the books. And it happens to be a psychology book called The Transparent Self by Robert Jodrey. Jodrey, I think that was his name. And I just opened it up at random because I'm kind of calling out to Hashem. And the page I opened up to said, if somebody is contemplating taking their life, they should realize that the part of themselves that they want to discard is not the true part of themselves. It's a part of themselves that they've outgrown. So if you can let that part go, then you can continue on in your life. So that was a direct message to me that I felt so grateful to Hashem, just at the right moment. Coming there with that message was as clear as if I received a prophetic message from God, and I'm here to feel about it, to be happy about that communication.
There is a psalm that talks about 4 kinds of things that happen to people for which they give thanks. So one of the reasons why we call people to the Torah to bench Gomel, to give thanks for miracles that happen in their life, is because the psalm says, for those 4 things, which are, if you were sick and you got healed, if you were a prisoner and you were free, if you were in a ship and you were and the ship broke or something like this, and you were saved, then you have to tell the miracle. And if you were imprisoned and you were freed. Did I say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did, yes.
So one is sick, one is a ship, one is a
Prison.
A dangerous thing happened to you?
the prison. Oh, yes, the one who goes through the desert and gets lost in the desert and makes his way up. So for these 4 things we have to bench God. And as it tells there, Vayisapru Ma'asav B'Rina, and they tell of God's miracle with a song, with joy. So witnessing God's miracles is a great mitzvah. So anybody who has a story to tell, to witness God's miracles in their life is welcome to come up here and to share. Because, please.
So about a year and a half ago, I was going in for surgery for what was supposed to be a small calcium deposit that was attached to my abdomen. And I had a very good doctor who I knew, who had operated on someone else, Julie Strong, who's her visitor. And it was supposed to be pretty routine. And after they put me under, it turned out that the calcium deposit was the size of a rugby ball.
Oh.
And it had veins totally through it. And so the doctors were expecting to go in and get something kind of mushy. So they had tongs to do mushy things. They weren't expecting something big and not mushy hard. Yes, thank you. So they were quite excited, actually, because they had never done anything like this before. It was quite the talk of the hospital. So it was much more horrendous surgery. It took a lot longer. In the meantime, that morning, before I went to the hospital, Chaim Miller had sent me a copy of his Goodnick edition of the Chumash, and my wife remembered to bring it, intentionally brought it with us, and the entire time I was in surgery, and the entire time I was recovering, she read the Torah. And when I was asleep, she read to me out loud. And when I finally woke up enough to realize she had been reading, I sort of waited an hour for her reading, fell asleep. When I woke up, it's supposed to be a very long recovery. Like eventually, after a few days, you'd work up to walking. I woke up and I said, well, the doctor said it's good to dangle my legs over the side of the bed. And she's like, no, you just woke up. So I get up and I put my feet over the side of the bed, and I'm like, the floor's not that far. I put my feet on the floor and I start walking. And she went running for help because I was still attached to things, but really, it was just an amazing experience. She didn't once stop reading for me. And I had gone through this tricky surgery, and it was just amazing. So thanks.
Hodu l'Adonai Kidor, K'Adam Chaso. Anyone else? Boy, I don't believe it. It's not about you, but that's all.
We have letters.
We won't let you out until you share.
I'm telling this actually on someone else's behalf, and it's because I'm reminded by Karen. I told this to you. My mother periodically would feel like nobody's listening. She's praying and nobody's listening. She's talking to the wall. She had just been given a fax machine. She didn't know how to use it. They plugged it in, they set it up, they put paper. She didn't know the number yet. She hadn't told anybody the number. She didn't know what to do with it. But she was in the middle of this, she was in this mood of, am I talking to the wall? Does God listen to prayer? Is there a God at all? What's the meaning of my life? And when she got like this, she used to say, I need a sign. So she said, I need a sign. The following morning, I was there when this happened. She came into her little office and a piece of paper was standing up in the fax machine for which no one knew the number. And it said, transmission received.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'm Katie.
Yeah. Last year, we were still living in New York, and I had a major surgery on Yom Kippur, actually. I went in, it was October 5th of last year, and I had, they didn't know I had a lot of internal bleeding, and they didn't know what it was, and they thought that I actually had an ectopic pregnancy. And they were going to, I called it Sala, which is like emergency, medics at 6 o'clock, and Yom Kippur started at 6:08. So I went with my husband and my sister-in-law. We went to Mount Sinai Hospital. And I went in for this emergency surgery where they were going to take out.
He wants to talk to.
They were going to take my fallopian tube, which I thought my baby was in. And I had a surgery at 11 o'clock on Yom Kippur. And at the time, I was reading this book by Alan Liu, Rabbi Alan, called This Is Real and You're Completely Unprepared. And it was all about the high holidays and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And talking about how it's basically you kind of have to release a lot and let go a lot, and there has to be almost a loss of life to a certain extent in order for you to become new. Anyway, she went in, and my doctor that I had just met the day before, actually, she did this emergency surgery, and she went in and she said everything was fine and there was nothing wrong. And she said she went in and she expected to take things out and expected that things would be, and everything was fine. I actually lost a liter of blood, which you only have 5, so I lost, and I had a blood transfusion on Yom Kippur last year. And my baby, which they thought was actually not going to be here, and he's here. and so when they were giving me the blood transfusion, they said, I think this is coming from like a mountain man in Montana. I feel the blood. And it was a really amazing experience. They actually couldn't see the baby until, because I was only like 3 weeks pregnant, so they couldn't see him until like 3 weeks later. And so after this huge transformation and everything, he's here and I'm fine.
Yay!
Yeah. We're older, so.
Katie. Katie. Even dein Mäuel umdreht.
Ein bisschen. I was thinking about the miracles I've had in my life. I noticed that a number of them were directly located in my friendship with Rabbi Zalman, that he had something to do about it. He doesn't know it, but I know it. A couple of years ago, I was quite ill. I was in the hospital, and it turned out that I couldn't go back to where I had been living, and I had to find another place to live. I was very ill, and I got the paper in the morning, and I saw an apartment listed. It was just exactly what I could afford, and location, everything was fine, except I couldn't get there. So I prayed, and I called them. And it turned out that that day that I called them, the company went away on a picnic, and all their picnics, so the office was closed. I said, oh boy, how can I get there? And put in an application, drop in a notice. And I was praying, and then a man walked in from my meditation group. He said, hi Katie, I was just dropping by. You need anything? So I got the nurse. I got permission for 2 hours to leave the hospital with my oxygen tank. And he drove me over to the place. It was locked. I put in my application and check. Got back to the hospital and waited and prayed. This is where you come in. It so happened that when the organization came back to work the next day, the woman who processed applications called in sick. And the woman who looked at the applications knew you. And they saw your name on my application as a reference. And this is the story she told me. She pulled it out and she said, forget the others. And she used it as a reference, because that's the one.
Wow.
That's only one of the stories.
All right. I tell you what.
So she
You
has
are
something.
too chicken to get up right now. I'll schmooze a little bit in between. But if you stand up, I'll stop right away. Because, oh, come.
I'm going to tell the truth. I mean, some of you know I was in an accident, and I'm to be totally open that I'm struggling between knowing it was a wonderful miracle, a good thing that I didn't get killed or brain injured. But I'm uncomfortable. But anyway, I just want to acknowledge that I do know, and I am grateful that the accident ended up being worse than it was.
Amen. Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so last November, my husband got a severe accident and he was in the Olam Shekulam Tov twice. And actually the next day, Matan and I was there, and Rabbi Benji from Westminster, the Chabad Rabbi, and Matan stand with him, and he's praying, saying Tehillim, and he's next to his bed, and Michael's blood pressure was very, very low. And as he prayed, the blood pressure is going up. So Matan said to Rabbi Benji, "Can I see the blood pressure is going up?" And he said, "Can I also say a prayer?" Please, and they both sang the prayer, and I'm there with them, and the blood pressure is going up and up. And Baruch Hashem, Michael is good.
Yeah.
Also, for the Jewish day school kids, they asked me what should we do, and of course I said to everybody, pray and give tzedakah. So they did say Tehillim every day. So when I came back to school, I said, we saved Michael's life. We say Tehillim every day, and that's exactly what I want them, because it was Baruch Hashem.
When you sing, you have to say Tehillim. So there was a time before the establishment of the state of Israel, when Rommel, remember who came, the German Panzer commander, who came through Egypt and was threatening coming into Palestine at that time. And there was this woman who was going around the street and said, "Don't rely on miracles, recite Psalms."
That's great.
That's a great line. And I want to talk a little bit about the miraculous order, because here is where the teaching of the Baal Shem comes in. He brought back the miraculous order into the Jewish street. People use the Yiddish Gatz, the Jewish street. What do I mean by that? When the Maggid of Mezrich came to him to study with him, the Baal Shem Tov says, "Are you aware of the writings of the Ariya Kodesh, the Holy Lion of Tzfat?" And he says, "Yes." "Do you know this passage?" And he says, "Yes." He recites the passage and he sees the Baal Shem Tov isn't happy. And he says, maybe you like the interpretation from that another one of the disciples has given, and he launches into that, and the Baal Shem still wrote like it. Whereupon he says, "Well, you seem to know better than I, so please tell me." And the Baal Shem Tov says, "Stand up." And they stood up, both of them, and he took that passage and began to read the passage, and everything that was in the passage suddenly became real in front of their eyes. And that's the kind of learning that the Maggid up to that time hadn't made. So you get to see that there is an element of re-enchantment. If I want to give the Baal Shem Tov a particular credit, it would be for having re-enchanted Jewish life. What do I mean to say by that? This week I had a wonderful guest. His name was Mordechai Zeller. He's the son of Rabbi David Zeller, who when he first began, he would have stickers that were, and I have one on my door that says, "Put the elf back into the cell." In a sense, what he was saying with this was that most people have a sense that the miraculous order does not exist. And yet, whenever you get to that kind of coincidence of 1291, or you get to the place of, thank God, could have been worse and it wasn't, and all the miracles that happened, including a fax machine, then you get to see that the world is not as machine-like as Descartes would have described it in his philosophy, but it's a lot more alive. And there's one, the lebendiger Gott, the living God, that sense that people have of God is alive, El Chai V'Kayam. The Sufis too will chant Yahai Yachayum, Yahai Yachayum, for the same reason. God is alive. That sense of the aliveness of God is what philosophers never got. With all the proofs that they have, they don't come to that thing, that there's a living God whom we face and who gives us, belives us, keeps us in life. Asam nafshenu b'chaim v'lo natan lamot ragleinu. He keeps our souls in life. He puts our souls into life space. And that's so wonderful. So when the Baal Shem Tov was teaching, it was during the time of the second Seder of the Torah reading in Noah. And God says to Noah, you and your whole household, all the animals, you come into the Teva. Teva means the ark. But another meaning for the word Teva is a word. Like we say Rosh Teva, initials of words. Rosh Tevot words. Go into the Teva. What was he trying to say? There is a reality which is not measured in physical form. It's not measured in physical ways. Sometimes people who want to describe this more philosophically call it the imaginal universe. And in the imaginal universe, there are living things. And when we speak about the archetypes, they're living things. And when people say, I'm bored with prayer, it's because they're always standing on the stoop outside and they don't go into the house, into the Word, into the ark. Can you imagine if you just feel that you would like to move from this state in which we are in the shopping mall mentality? You want to switch. How do you switch? If you could say the word atah over and over and over again, and focusing closely into that you're facing the other. Atah, atah, atah. And I remember how David Seller would love to sing with us. Ribono Shalom, Ribono Shalom, Ribono Shalom, Ribono Shalom, Ribono Shalom, Ribono Shalom. This melody originates with a lady Yesod Foundation, who has this wonderful song, the Boulder, that begins with that phrase, Ribono Shalom, that melody. So when the Baal Shem Tov was saying you want to get into the miraculous order, then there is a way to do that, and that is to get into the Word and to take it, to make it very real. The Word becomes very real. Example, some people can say word, they're finished with them. And there's some other people, when they say the words, they get the mouth open. There was a Rebbe, and he happened to stay in an inn together with someone who was a great Talmud scholar. They had to be room next to the room. And the Talmud scholar was figuring out, curious to see this Hasidic Rebbe, what's he doing? And he keeps looking through the keyhole from time to time. In the meantime, he has studied one shiur and another shiur. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. And he still sees the original going around, oi, 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 in his room that way. Later on, at dinner, they sit at the same table, and he says to him, Rebbe, what were you doing in the morning? After all, by the time I looked last, you were still going around, oi, 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 and I had already davened and studied and done all these kinds of things. And the Rishona says, you know, happy are you that you can say these words so easy. I started out in the morning and I started to say, Mode ani lefanecha. And suddenly I became so aware of the abyss that exists between my little ani and that vast lefanecha. So I couldn't go on. I had to stay with that. I had to work it through. Do you see the difference between reciting and really getting into the word? He was saying, I looked at who's the ani and who's the panata. And that, when you are in that world, in that enchanted world, all miracles can happen. You know, I think for America, the time of that inaugural thing, the plaza, was such a holy moment, such a moment of enchantment. When there's a special bracha that you have to say, according to Rabbi Akiva in Birchat Hamazon, that when there's a large group of people, you have to say, blessed is the one who is the master of all miracles, the wise one of all miracles. You make such a special blessing because that is happening. And there was that miraculous moment, that special moment. So when people forget such moments and they don't get into the discursive stuff and they don't go into the word and they forget the miraculous order, and then no miracles can happen. So when we come and we meet here on Chai Elul, we want to reinforce the miraculous order. And so you tell us a little bit about Reb Shneur Zalman, maybe?
So just one story. There's a connection. The Hebrew word for miracle is nes, but there's another word that seems to be very different, but I think is very deeply related, and the Maharal actually talks about it too. There's a word nisayon, which means a trial. So in a way, the connection with the tests in our lives, challenges that really stretch us beyond our ordinary, what we think of as our capacity for functioning in life. So in a way, they're kind of twin words, because when God sees that we're willing to stretch ourselves either in reaching out to another person or in our understanding of things, and there's another teaching connected with the Noah idea from the Baal Shem Tov about, the Torah says, to Noah, Tzohar Taseh Lateva, make a window for the ark. So based on this idea that the word Teva also means word, it's really saying make the word into a window, like Rabbi Zalman was saying. And what you're doing is you're broadening your perspective. And when you broaden your horizon, Hashem, so to speak, God goes out of the natural boundaries of nature. So each one is stretching to that capacity. And that's really what holy people in Judaism, a tzaddik has that capacity to see beyond. I was reading that the Baal Shem Tov physically could see for 12 miles in all directions. And how much more so spiritually. There's once this story of a person who came to the Baal Shem Tov and said, my husband disappeared, I don't know where he is. That happened sometimes in those days. And the Baal Shem Tov had just come out of the restroom, and he was about to wash his hands, and he told the lady that your husband is in this city, who knows how many miles away. So the woman was kind of surprised and said, Rebbe, you came out of the bathroom. Aren't you supposed to wash your hands first before you go into this miraculous perception? So he said, for me, it's just like looking at you, looking at your husband. So I don't have to necessarily wash my hands for that. That's within my purview of ordinary vision. But for me, the power of a tzaddik, the power of a holy person, is not just to see and do beyond what ordinary people can do, but it's to have that care of stretching that person's individuality beyond the self to reach out to others. So there's a famous story about Rabbi Shneur Zalman. His grandson lived with him, the Tzemach Tzedek, and one time, he was in the house with his son, Rabbi Dov Ber, and the Tzemach Tzedek was just a little baby at the time, if I'm getting the details right. And Rabbi Dov Ber, it says about him, the son of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, that if you would just cut his finger, blood wouldn't flow out, Hasidic teachings would flow out. That's how immersed he was in Hasidic teachings. But one time, Rabbi Dov Ber was studying very deeply, and the grandson who was just a little baby, started to cry. And Reb Dovia was so immersed in his world that he couldn't hear, the baby crying. But the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the grandfather, did hear. And he, for one of the few times in his life, he actually criticized his son. He came to his son and he said, Dov Ber, don't you know that no matter how deeply immersed you are in Torah studies, you should never forget to hear the cry of a small child. And that's, to me, the greatest miracle that of a holy person, to be able to have a foot in both worlds, so to speak, to reach the highest levels of spirituality, but at the same time have that care and compassion for every neshama in the world. And that's, I think, is the true miracle.
L'chaim, l'chaim. About being in two worlds at once. Reb Shneur Zalman. He has a friend. He is the son of the Maggid of Mezrich, Rabbi Zalman. And when Reb Shneur Zalman came to study, everybody knew already that Reb Shneur Zalman was very well versed in the manifest part of the Torah. But he came to learn the deeper stuff, because when he had said, where should he go to study? Some people have said, why don't you go to Vilna? He said, in Vilna, you study Torah. In Mezrich, you learn from the Torah. So he needs to go to learn from the Torah. So what you learn from the Torah, that which is a little deeper. So the Maggid made a deal. He said, you teach my son 1 hour of the manifest part, and he'll teach you 1 hour of the hidden part. And they made a deal. And it's the only theft that Reb Shneur Zalman ever admitted, that when his friend was teaching him, he made the clock go a little slower. So here, the two of them are saying, enough with the words in the books. Let's go and practice that. And they go up to the attic and they close themselves off and they go into a very, very deep state. Now let me try and spell that one out a little bit. The capacity that we have is that we could attune to all kinds of vibratory levels. Most of us think that certain levels we can't attune. We can't reach there. But if you can manage to stretch the possibility of your attunement to higher and higher levels, the Baal Shem Tov says, where a person thinks, he is in that place. So if you go to the higher vibratory level and you become aware of that, then you are there. So there they were. Now, the Rabbi the Malach, they say that his whole food during the week was the skin of a pigeon, of a dove. He didn't eat very much. That's what he lived on. And when he got to those high regions, he didn't even want to come back. I tell you, I can see when I hear the stories of people who had out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and they said, I was so happy where I was in such bliss, I didn't want to come back, and all of a sudden, they got my heart to pump again, I came back into this painful body, but where I was so wonderful. So you can imagine that Rabbi Zalman, when he was in that state, wanted to stay there and didn't want to come back. Reb Shneur Zalman realized that, ran down to the kitchen, got a bagel, and got a pitcher of beer, and came up and made him drink beer and eat bagel. And that's how he saved his life. The next morning, he comes down, the Rebbe comes, the Maggid, and he says, Zalman, I'm very grateful you saved my son's life. But tell me, where in the world of Atzilus did you know how to find a bagel and beer? So you can understand that the point is that even when you are in that wonderful state, that you can still stay together with that. And I want to just say that's what the mitzvahs are about. The Dalai Lama, when he was young, at least, that's a story, it may be fiction, but that's how the story goes. He had a teacher who had come from Austria. And as a child, he wanted to fly kites. So he took him to fly kites in Lhasa. The wind was strong and he was having a lot of fun flying kites. Then he asked his teacher, tell me, the kite wants to fly and fly and fly, why do we have to hold him down by the string? And the teacher said, well, try, let go. And he let go, and the kite flew down. So he said, now you know that when you fly high, you need to have a string down. That's where you find a bagel in Atzilus. A short saying. Once Shneur Zalman is talking to Moshe Meisels, one of his great Hasidim, and he asks him, Moshe, what is God? Moshe, what is God? I should tell you. He says, Moshe, what is the soul? Do I know? Moshe, what is faith? And he says, you are the Rebbe, you tell me. And Reb Shneur Zalman says, do you think I know? But this we must say, and this we must maintain, that he is the only one who clearly exists, and besides him, nothing else has such clear existence. And that is God. And what is a soul? A soul is the one that really knows that he is the one who clearly exists, and besides him, nothing else clearly exists, and that he is God. And what is faith? Faith is the way by which the soul knows that he clearly exists, and nothing clearly exists, and that this is God. Now, I said it, and now it sounds like what people call a good word, you know? A nice bon mot. It's nice to remember. Clever Reb Shneur Zalman and so on and so forth. But you know what? When you take this inside and you say, there is a world in which this is really real, you know, and I want to be in touch, I want to vibrate with that world where that's really real, then some good things happen. That's what's so important. Kafka, Franz Kafka, has a story, The Parable on Parables. It's a wonderful story. Two guys are talking. One of them says, enough with your parables. You always tell me parables. Parables, stuff that doesn't exist. You say, go yonder. There's no yonder to go to. But Mensch can come, don't tell me your parables. So he says, there's no such a thing as parables. The other one says, if you would get into the parable, all the parables will come true for you. He said, I bet you there's only a parable. He says, you win the bet. But you only will win in reality. In parable, you lost. We got to go back over that one. Okay? You only, you know, he was saying, parables, there's no such a thing, there's no such a world to go into, you know. So then he says, I bet you there's only a parable. And it's true, it is only a parable. But, he says, you win the bet only in reality. Where you say that no such a thing as parable exists. But in parable life, you lost. You'll never get into that. You don't know what to do in order to make that switch. So that's what Hasidim really brought to us. that it made it possible that we got more into the miraculous order. What else do you want to tell us?
So there's this story about Rabbi Zalman and Shneur Zalman. They were once late for a wedding, and the wedding was in this building with a lot of rooms, a lot of doors, a lot of hallways to get there. And Rabbi Yitzchak said to Rabbi Shneur Zalman, let's take the shortcut, let's go through the walls. But Rabbi Shneur Zalman said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. So that's kind of like the idea with the Maharal, the famous story that he created this being out of clay to help deal with the blood libels of his time. And so the story goes that actually he warned his wife, don't use the golem for ordinary kind of, trivial pursuits. So the golem went away, but it was one Erev Shabbos, and his wife, Peril, was very busy, and she needed some water, but she had no one to get it, so she sent the golem to get water. And the golem knew how to get water, but he didn't know when to stop. So he kept on pouring the buckets, so kind of memories of Fantasia.
Yes.
And that's where people say the idea for the Sorcerer's Apprentice actually came from that story of the Maharal. So we don't know, historians, I've been doing some Googling on it, and historians say, did the golem really exist, didn't he? Was it just made up? Was it something real that happened? And I've been reading a little bit of the Maharal. Actually, he doesn't talk specifically about making a golem, but he talks a lot about using Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, to actually create miraculous beings. And he has a whole teaching how that's not kishuf, that's not what's called witchcraft. Because he says, in a very kind of straightforward way, like we've been talking about all night, how did God create the world? He used all his holy names. So if holy names created a world, why can't righteous people who are in vibratory tune with that level of existence of God's holy names also use those holy names for holy purposes? So we don't know what happened, but there is a story that's told actually about the Second World War when Nazis broke into the shul in Prague where the golem was supposed to be kept in the attic, and they went upstairs and they were trying to ransack the whole place, but somehow when they found a container with something in it, something jumped up at them and they ran out terrified, screaming, pale. And we don't know what they saw there, but where there's smoke, there's fire. So, and there's also a story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak. When he was a little boy, he went with his father, Rabbi Shalom, there to visit the shul in Prague. And while he was discussing some things with some rabbis there, the little boy ran upstairs to the attic and also came down in a little panic. And his father kind of yelled at him and said, Yosef Yitzhak, you don't know what kind of work I had to do to make sure you came out safely. So who knows? And I'm always telling people, I don't think it's so important that you have to believe in this particular miracle or that particular miracle, but to not believe in the concept of miracles, to close your radar screen, to not recognize ultraviolet or infrared is really not only limiting your field of perception, but closing yourself down to the possibility of miracles. So I really want to bless you all that you stay open. And with that openness, opening your heart, opening your soul, opening your mind, miracles indeed can happen.
Amen.
The story you told about that chassan, I heard it a little different.
Okay.
And it goes like this.
It's the mailbird.
That when Yitzchak came to be the mechutna of Shneur Zalman, he said, I'd love to hear your son, Boulder, to teach. So Shneur Zalman asked his son, Boulder, that he should give a teaching. But Rabbi Yitzchak was no slouch himself, and you can imagine, when he heard something, he would go into ecstasy about it, because he really knew how to go behind the words. So a dope bear who could teach about the highest things really got them very strong. Now they come to a door and they have to go through the door. And Rabbi Yitzchak doesn't want to go in front of a dope bear. Who doesn't want to go in front of his father? They're standing at the door and they're trying to make up their mind. Après-vous, Alphonse Gaston, you know, first. So they held hands together and they walked through. And the wall didn't stop them. So that's how I would describe it. So either way, it's a good story. The niggin that Rabbi Zalman composed is known as the niggin of the 4 stanzas. Each one of the stanzas is located in one of the universes. So you can imagine that when Hasidim sing that song, they always go into a place where they want to be in touch with the inside of the niggin. So I'll sing the niggin. And the best thing that you can do is hum along in a prayerful way. It's like you're getting a chance to climb Jacob's ladder, and you get to the top, and then when we have done the 4th part of Elul, we go back to the lower one once more, so that we can reconstitute ourselves and come back. One of the things that one has to remember is that when you go up on each level, there are treasures. On the way down, you have to pick up some of the treasures you encountered on the way up. Otherwise, you will feel that nothing has happened. So it goes when people say the prayer in the morning. So we start out with the body part, then we go to the feeling part, the hallelujah, then we go to the mind part of the Shema, then we go to the Amida that's in the highest place. And after we are through with the Amida, there starts a process called Yeridat HaShefa, bringing down the influence, the goodness that we were in touch with by going up to bring it down, which is another way of coming with the whole cycle that we were talking about, making connections between the worlds. Because for many people, these worlds are separated. And we need to make sure that the worlds are connected with each other. So here goes the name. that you bring the presence of that person there. So if you were to be able to encounter either the Baal Shem or the Shneur Zalman, and you would come before Rosh Hashanah to get a bracha from them, what kind of a blessing would you ask? Let's sit a little quiet and ask him for brachas. I know what brachas I need to ask for. יברך את בית ישראל, יברך את בית אדוני, יברך יראי אדוני, הקטנים הגדולים, היוסר אדוני עליכם, עליכם ועל בניכם, ברוכים אתם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ, שמיים כמים אדוני, והארץ נתן בידם, לא המסים הללויה, ולא יוצאנו ואנחנו נברך ים, ואתה מאדוני, ואתה מאדוני, hallelujah.
One last story about the Alter Rebbe. Shneur Zalman was once sitting with his grandson on his lap, and his grandson was pulling his beard and kind of testing him or teasing him, and he says, pulling his beard, he said, "Is this the Zayda?" He said, the grandfather said, "Nay, my kid, no, my child, this is not the Zayda." And then he pulled his ears, he pulled his kapote. No, this is not the Zayda. And Rabbi Shneur Zalman walked up to go out, and the little boy yelled out, "Zayda!" And when Rabbi Shneur Zalman was at the door, he turned around and said, "Ah, this is the Zayda. This is the Zayda." So when we call out to God in that essence that's greater than anything that exists in the world, this is the God that we call upon. And I was telling Mark before, there's a beautiful saying that I just heard, that instead of telling your problems to God, tell about God to your problems. Because God's always bigger than the problems that you have. And that's the place where miracles come from.
Amen.
Shana Tova.
Thank you. L'chaim, l'chaim.
I hope you continue to stay inspired and uplifted.